Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mario Cristobal, the Miami Hurricanes continue to roll Saturday night against Florida State. Dill, by far the biggest takeaway here is Miami showing how many different ways they can win a football game. Where up until this point, they've kind of not relied, but they've had Cam Ward play hero ball. He's been the best quarterback in the country. He's won them a lot of football games to start 2024. We said heading into this game, it was going to be difficult for Cam Ward to put up 400 passing yards and 4 touchdowns against a Florida State team that, yeah, they stink. They got some really, really good boundary cornerbacks, like legit NFL dudes. They have guys that can rush the passer. It was always going to be tough to throw the football on Florida State. You saw Miami say, all right, that's okay, because we have a run game that is now emerging as one of the best rushing attacks, not only in the ACC, but in the country. We leaned on Damien Martinez and Mark Fletcher to get it done. My biggest takeaway is Miami dominated a football game when Cam Ward wasn't dominating the game. And if you're Miami, that's what you need. If you're trying to go undefeated in the regular season, win an ACC championship game, be a threat in the college football playoffs, you got to be able to win in a couple of different ways. Miami showed that Saturday night against Florida State. And although, on the scoreboard, it didn't necessarily reflect dominance the first 3 quarters of the football game, there was really never a point where you thought Florida State was in this game. When you have the ability to control the line of scrimmage like Miami does, it doesn't necessarily need to be 40-0 for you to dominate a game. That's kind of the vibe I got from Miami on Saturday night. Want to get into, a couple of other talking points and definitely some things to clean up for Miami heading into Duke next week. Now, before we get into it, as always, number one, to the Miami Hurricane fans, y'all continue to show the boys a ton of love. It's been a blast talking this program all 2024 long. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you guys more than y'all know. But I think more importantly, though, we're going to try to give shout outs to all the players that we think deserve shout outs. We are certainly not going to get to every single one of those players, so let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Though that was a long intro, I apologize. I'm going to give you the T-box here. Biggest takeaways from this win for the Canes?
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is they're getting a little bit more explosive in the run game, because I think look, it's not like they've had a bad run game all season, but it hasn't been wildly explosive. They've done a good job keeping that Miami team on schedule and out of some bad spots at times, but they haven't really been able to hit big runs. You look at these past 2 weeks, Mark Fletcher and Damien Martinez, and Ajay Allen probably deserves his shout out too. But all 3 of them are starting to hit bigger runs. And Damien Martinez, I think, is finding his form kind of more what we saw from him at Oregon State, where you were pretty consistently being able to rip off big runs, showing good contact balance, more explosiveness in the hole. That, to me, is the big thing, because you said it, again, you're going to play teams like Florida State who have good boundary corners and who can do things to put a lid on this Miami offense, if you will. It's not like they stopped the passing attack, because on 3rd down, they were really efficient in the air. They were able to keep themselves on the field, but they weren't particularly explosive. I think they found a little bit of explosiveness in the run game, and I think that's going to be a big thing going forward, because, again, for the first handful of weeks, they just weren't explosive. They didn't hit big runs. I think today, and even in Louisville, they were able to hit them.
It was so I have 2 talking points. One, Damien Martinez, and we kind of talked about this leading up over the last couple of weeks. It kind of makes sense why there were some growing pains for Damien Martinez. Where you go back to the Oregon State film, it was consistent outside zone. They ran about as much outside zone as you see any team in the country. And Damien Martinez, that kind of style where you just kind of put your foot in the ground and attack the line of scrimmage, it's a little bit different from the blocking and run schemes that Miami likes to run in the run game, where it's a lot of inside zone. But I think more importantly, it's a lot of RPOs. Oregon State didn't run a ton of RPOs in the run game, where the Miami Hurricanes offensive line, they're not necessarily just moving bodies off the line of scrimmage because they can't get downfield. Cam Ward has the opportunity to pull it and push the ball down the field. I think there were some growing pains in terms of Damien Martinez adjusting to how I want to run the football within this Miami Hurricanes offense. Mario Cristobal said as much in the press conference. You're starting to see a click for Damien Martinez. We're starting to see the All-American caliber running back that we saw for Oregon State the last 2 years. 7 yards after contact per carry last night, Dale. That's Damien Martinez numbers. To get him going along with Mark Fletcher, we talked about this in the offseason. Teams ain't going to want to tackle Damien Martinez and Mark Fletcher 30 times in a football game. Miami kind of made Florida State do that, and they kind of just wilted away in that second half. You just had a team that you kind of just grinded down. And although you didn't pull away early in this football game, you controlled how this game was played. I think one other thing, 8 of 14 on third downs, that's a direct result of run the football well on first and second down. I mean, yeah, Miami had a couple third and long conversions, but a lot of the times they were just on schedule on those third downs. The whole playbook was open. So you saw that efficiency kind of get ticked up for Miami too.
But also, like, if you're going to be a good team, like playing the way Miami can play, again, like you maybe want to see more explosiveness in the air. But if you're going to win a game like this, you're going to need your quarterback to make 3 or 4 of those third down conversion plays where he puts a little bit on his back. And like, again, that's like, you look at the numbers, they don't wow you for Cam Ward, but he's still doing those things, like making those 3rd and 13s or a 3rd and 8 or something like that. He's still making those plays. They stay on the field. They grind this Florida State team down. Like, that is a nice recipe to winning a lot of games. I think that's how Michigan did it. That's how Georgia's done it for the past handful of years. Like, that's a good recipe to have. And Miami hasn't necessarily needed to show it because they were really explosive for the most part for the first 7 weeks. But they have this in their bag where if they have to grind you down, they can certainly do it because their lines of scrimmage play is great.
They can win in a lot of different ways, and we saw them win in a different way than we're used to seeing, and I think that might make some fans uncomfortable at first. But in my opinion, like, that's a positive for Miami to show you they can win in some different ways. One thing you want to see them get worked on is pass protection. Kind of a weird conversation where, look, we know the offensive line is good from a personnel standpoint. They just didn't play all that great as a unit. Credit Mike Norvell and Adam Fuller for dialing up some really kind of exotic looks and blitz packages. If there's one thing Miami needs to clean up here, Dill, is you got Manny Diaz coming. You're playing Duke and Manny Diaz next Saturday. He's going to throw a lot of those blitz packages up there too. Miami wasn't losing their one-on-ones in pass protection, but they were struggling communicating and picking up free run. There were a lot of free runners to Cam Ward. So if there's one thing you want to continue to see Miami get better at, that is pass protection, specifically picking up some of those blitzes. Dill, you noted this, and I'll kind of let you talk about this, but you saw them kind of make a halftime adjustment. Hey, Florida State's bringing a lot of heat. We got to start getting the ball out a little bit quicker to our guys in space. You saw them do that in the second half, along with lean on the run game. Those are 2 ways to really slow down a pass rush. We're not used to saying Miami makes elite in-game adjustments. You're kind of continuing to see them make some of those adjustments throughout the 2024 year. That's another way you could take confidence in this team, where the in-game coaching seems to be getting better for Miami as well.
Yeah, I think that was a big thing. And just getting the ball out, like throwing into the pressures, using quick slants, some of that other stuff. Again, I know they want to get the ball down the field, and I would too if I'm Miami. But if a team like Florida State's going to play them the way they were playing them, like they did get some easy stuff, like just some underneath work that gave them like 10 free yards because they were able to throw it off a blitz. So again, that is something that like has been wildly frustrating. I think you noted it, like with this Mario Cristobal staff over the past 3 years, is just like, yeah, they're not adjusting. And it felt like that at times where they'd give up big leads in the late in games or make those mistakes or not kind of figure out a way to make something happen against a team like Virginia where you play them like 3-6 or something. You just aren't really seeing that right now. And it wasn't a particularly clean first half for that passing attack. But again, it did feel like it started to get going. They did a little bit of different things. And again, those are things like when you get into dogfights, if you see Clemson, let's say in the ACC championship game, you're going to need to make those against that type of team.
Yeah, 100%. Now you move over to the defense, and let's just start with this. It's hard to take away a ton. This Florida State team is very, very bad on offense. You saw some of your best players play some of their best football, or at least get back to their form. And I think it starts with Kiko at that linebacker spot. We've been not critical of Kiko, but we know what he can do because we saw it all in 2023, and he hasn't necessarily played to that level the last couple of weeks. Massive bounce back game from Kiko. These linebackers are crucially important to this Hurricanes defense, where when you have a defensive line that is slanting and getting vertical, yeah, they're going to create a lot of negative plays, and they've been doing that the last couple of weeks, and we love that. But there's also going to be some creases that are created within this defense. You need your linebackers fit in those holes. You saw some bad run fits the last couple of weeks. You saw some really good run fits from guys like Kiko last night. Also really good in coverage. I mean, carrying some guys up the sideline. That, again, that's stuff that Kiko knew. As big and as physical as this kid is, Like we've seen him be a phenomenal athlete in space going back to 2023. Really good game from Kiko. Dill, if there was one, and again, why are we nitpicking? Because we know this team can be extremely dangerous. So I think there's always things like, hey, how can we continue to work towards the best form that we have? This pass rush is so disruptive, right? 133 quarterback hurries on the season for Miami. I want to see that disruption turn into more and more sacks where they are still being very disruptive. There's almost never pockets for quarterbacks to throw the football, but quarterbacks have been able to get outside the pocket and create in space. I want to see Miami continue to be, hey, we're going to be really disruptive, but we're going to turn that disruption into more and more negative plays. And if they can do that, like it's kind of how this Miami Hurricanes defense gets to that next level, if you will, in the 2024 year.
And especially because that has almost been the way that a lot of teams have been able to do anything.
Yeah.
Like Cal, Virginia Tech, and then you look Florida State. Not that Florida State really did anything, but there are a couple plays where one was like that weird quarterback sneak, which I don't even know how to explain that. But again, like those like odd plays where Glenn or Comino getting out of the pocket, running the ball themselves, or finding guys downfield. So it's like, again, that little thing, it's you want the disruption, but I think you are right. It's like they do need to do a better job maintaining rush lanes, or maybe finding a different strategy to just stop letting that happen, because it is giving some freebies. It feels like,
because it feels like, and at times you're kind of right. Like, feels like that's the only way teams are having success against this Miami Hurricanes defense. More man coverage, loved it. Like what we've talked about, the struggles that Miami had in zone coverage in terms of the communication, giving off routes, sitting in your right zones. I think Miami went into this game saying, let's simplify it for our guys. And let's ask them to play a little bit more man coverage. You saw them do a pretty, like the Florida State completions, they were 11-32 on the night. They only had 2 pass plays over 20 yards. So you saw Miami do a really good job kind of keeping a lid on explosive plays. And, hey, we're going to make you drive 12 plays, 80 yards if you want to score on us. OJ Frederic, this kid was a low 3-star. I don't even know if we broke down his commitment to Miami. And we break down almost every single commitment to this Hurricanes team. He didn't even play in the spring. He comes in the summer. He has immediately taken over that starting quarterback spot. This kid's been awesome for the Miami Hurricanes. If he continues to get better and kind of becomes that almost like cornerback one at this point for Miami, I think that fires up a lot of Hurricane fans. Look, outside of that, you keep rolling, you keep winning. Mario Cristobal has been saying this all year, like 1-0 every week. That I know that's coach speak. We're seeing a lot of really good teams drop football games when they don't play their best. Miami, I don't even know if we've seen reach their full potential as a football team, but they continue to win games. And I think that's something you're really fired up about if you're a Miami fan, because we've seen Miami play some bad football, but also lose some really ugly games over the last couple of years. They ain't doing that. I think it starts with Cam Ward, but it starts with how many different ways this Miami Hurricanes team can win a football game. That was my biggest takeaway.
You've just seen this team kind of morph into the right stuff. I mean, how good they are on both sides line of scrimmage, just being able to you don't blow a ton of games and you can dominate both sides like the way they're doing. And the defensive line can really take them over. The offensive line certainly showed today that if you want to put it in their corner, they can do it too. It makes them more bulletproof than they were, where it was very high-low kind of situation.
I think that's a really good way of saying it. There are so many teams that they can be really good if certain things work. They're really relying on a couple of guys. You look at Boise State. If you shut down Ashton Genty, you have a chance at beat. When you're bulletproof, like what you said, you can win a lot of different ways. You saw Miami kind of show that on Saturday night. We'll close it out there. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.